I'd like to call the Audit Committee special meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We hope that another member will make it through the weather, but if they don't, we do have a quorum. Just everybody to introduce themselves. I'm Commissioner Kwiatkowski. I was nominated, elected by the board to see this term out as the chair of the Audit Committee. I do not have financial background. I have managed budgets in my job. So I'm just, at this point, going to lead things and rely on your expertise because I know how expert you are.
Yeah, come on up here with us. We're sitting in the big.
It's fun up here.
Better to be out there trying to.
It's okay.
So if we're doing introductions, I'll go next.
Yeah.
My name's Jeff Chance. It'll be my second year up here. I guess it'd be third, but we didn't do anything last year, so. And my retired now. My background was in banking. Was with BB&T for 44 years. The last 15, 18 years was in payments operations, managing that.
Janine Richmond. I work at a long-term care organization still in New Jersey and have a home here. I've had it for about 15 years. I am a CPA and an MBA and have worked, in finance for 30 years, so it's my expertise.
My name is Tony Schiavone.
Hi, Tony.
How are you?
I remember you.
I've been a CPA, was in public life for about 8 years. Enjoy serving our wonderful town.
Okay.
David Hewitt, I'm the town manager, finance officer, the clerk has joined us too. And if, by way of introduction, if I could introduce to the board our deputy finance officer, Daniel McRaney. I and we are particularly proud of Daniel. He's a local boy, recent graduate of Wingate.
Great.
All right.
He went to high school here at West Brunswick, but he's also got his master's of accountancy moving into it. So and I believe he's actually passed one of the first exams for the general finance GFLA certification course. So,
Wonderful.
thank you.
More power to you. Keep it up.
How long has he been with?
Since this time last year.
Right.
Yeah, you just missed a lot of stuff not being able to
Yeah,
actually
we did.
come to things. Okay, moving on in the agenda then, were there any public comments submitted?
No, ma'am.
Okay, there's no public here, so there won't be any comments. Approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which was over a year ago. I actually didn't attend that meeting. Yeah, that was a difficult time of my life. But for those of you who were there, does anybody want to move to approve the minutes, or are there any alterations, changes, corrections to be made?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. I'm going to now, for number 4, got a mic, but I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about what's going on with the audit status and schedule.
Very briefly, I'll go back from the end backwards. I've included the contract that was part and parcel of the previous minutes whereby y'all made a recommendation to the board for Martin Starnes, and which, oh, by the way, I'm going to roll in this one like a dog on a possum on the highway. That audit was completed on time, on effort, with all discrepancies corrected from the prior year.
That's wonderful.
So we're tickled over that. Where we are in the second year of their contract. We've done all the preliminaries, and Elsa, the named hurricane, but Elsa, the auditor, also did her field work week before last. Spent the entire week with us. Matter of fact, she finished up a day early and had no issues of concern that she communicated to me. Everything seems to be on the proper glide slope, although that is subject to, when they ruminate over all the take backs with them, there could be something, but I have not been made aware of anything, and she spoke well of her encounters with us.
And the contract we're under was a 2-year contract. So
It was a 3-year renewable at 1 year increments. So they're in year 2, and I'm gonna kind of jump down in a related item because that question does lead me to that. Because we're in the middle of our FEMA project, which, don't let me go too far down this rabbit hole, we're on schedule to meet with the local government commission next week to pull down basically our takedown, our payday loan, short-term, to do the beach nourishment project starting 15 November. The board has made the selection on the dredger. We've got our financing package in. Matter of fact, that's what I'm putting the final touches on. Everything's ready to go. We've just got to sit in front of Beth Wood and that group on the 13th in order to make that happen. I only mention that because to date, we haven't pulled enough of the preliminary FEMA money down that we qualify for, or the requirement for a single audit. The $750,000 hasn't been met this year. It'll be met in this upcoming budget year. So there's going to be, I'm gonna have to get mighty ill at our current auditor before I don't recommend keeping them on for the single point audit in the 3rd year because of the handoff between this closeout year and what we're coming up on. Because we're familiar with, we've developed that, and it's gonna have to be a lot of stuff break before I don't recommend them.
But what is that time period when we would have to make a decision on that 3rd year?
That would have to be probably in the February-ish timeframe. Let's see, when's the date on this one right
I think we did it, didn't we do it a little bit earlier even this year?
Let's see what the date was, sorry.
Because we were concerned about the workload. that
This
was
was
coming.
actually in February.
Yeah,
this
I think we discussed it in the January DOC.
Okay.
But, it was an issue of being concerned about the availability of firms, and with everything going on with COVID, firms collapsing or small firms going away. And since everyone was quite pleased with how the audit had gone, it was sort of accelerated. So there's nothing magical about it. Has to wait. It has to wait until the audit's over, and there's been a judgment on, was it a professional audit, well managed, but we don't have to wait until into next spring to do it.
Yeah, and I only, jumped ahead a little bit because the next thing is to scope and coordinate committee efforts for the upcoming year because of the single point requirement or single audit requirement threshold being met next year, and the fact that there are a couple of additional financings potentially before the board. Depending on when those would need to go to the local government commission, the audit would need to be advanced. The this year's audit would need to be expedited in order to get it completed before the local government commission would entertain, i.e., if we want to go issue debt in November, we've got to have the audit done in October. We can't wait till December. But after that, it goes back to, be okay to have it done by December kind of thing. We're still under contract for October. I don't know what I'm telling you there as far as advising you on your calendar availability. It's just that those are moving somewhat fluid dates at this point in time, and we'll know more later.
Now, the November would be the bike path, wouldn't it?
And the sewer lift station.
And the sewer lift station, yes. There's just a lot going on.
So,
Um,
so that's kind of what I had there.
Okay. Any questions from anybody about that?
And we're tracking for this audit, the 6/30/21 audit to be completed by October.
Yes, sir.
No, I guess that traditionally means sometime in October, this board tries to get together, right?
Depending on
Depending
what's
on- yeah,
what's
it's-
available.
Depending on what's available at that time, if we're gonna push for it to be done by the end of October, you assume that we'll need to meet sometime in the second half of October. So, I guess we'll send a call out for people's availability in the second half of October and sort of stay a little fluid, but we can set a date.
And that does marry up with the, in the ordinance, whatever that may be, that would meet 4 times a year. So since we're meeting now in July, and I think that was kind of the schedule previously.
Right, okay. David has a lot going on because now we have a potential emergency because Elsa turned into a hurricane, so there's gonna have to be a little bit of pre-planning. So I just wanna quickly
We're
go.
gonna get to evacuate y'all next week.
Bullshit. So, the reviewing the charter ordinance update discussion, I do recall that Woody had that on his list of something that he wanted to do as well. You may not be aware that back in 2019, it had actually been discussed at the Board of Commissioners that perhaps we needed to look at the ordinance because there were a lot of things that were just not consistent with how other committees were represented. And also, there seemed to be a lot of confusion about exactly what the audit committee was about, the limitations, their scope. And I was very into it at that time and actually did write a 3-page paper that went to the board because I thought we were going to discuss it. And then the board said, no, we just want to leave it the way it is. So, but nevertheless, I have brought that 3-page paper and we can copy it and give it to everybody, realizing some of the stuff on here you've done, which was, part of it was setting up a process to choose an auditor, which we thought was just absolutely critical. But other things are from a non-audit committee member perspective as well. And what I'd like to propose is for our next meeting, everybody come with what you think the audit ordinance should look like. Knowing that, in my opinion, the audit committee is here to support the BOC, provide assistance and support as necessary to the town finance department, should they ask and need it, make sure our audits are run correctly. If there are issues in audits, work with the town manager on necessary steps if things have to be changed somewhat. You guys are the experts on that. David is too. And it shouldn't be confrontational. And we have had confrontation issues in the past.
Do you think that was because of the ordinance or just because of the personalities?
Well, but the personalities created the ordinance.
So the ordinance
So-
has that kind of wiggle room in it to allow.
I believe so. I believe because some of the people who had the confrontational aspect created or supplemented the ordinance, that in places it's not as helpful as it should be. And I will just quickly say, one of my first things is, I find it absolutely ludicrous that every year we select an audit committee. Other committees, boards have multiple years. At least, they're all three, at least two. The more expertise and long-term we get with members, the easier things go, the smoother things are. The more you can pick up things if they have to be, if anything's there to be picked up early, because you're familiar. So this choosing every year is bizarre. And I also have never liked the chair of the audit committee making the recommendations of who should be on the board. That's in the ordinance. I have never liked that.
How are your other boards,
They-
chairmen identified?
Well,
Among the other boards?
Well, no, it's not just the chair, it's the members themselves.
themselves.
That the chair of the audit committee was recommending who should be put on the board, on the audit committee. That needs to go. Other chairs are elected from the members that have been voted in by the board. I think one of the reasons the audit committee wanted a person from the committee to be the chair, I term it as bring somebody from the board into the audit committee because they're more aware of everything that's going on at the Board of Commissioners level. I don't necessarily think that means the chair of the committee needs to be the board member. I think it benefits from having a board member, which again is another thought of how you want to go down the path.
But I think that the answer to your question is that the Board of Commissioners appoints all members to all the other boards. It's this one that's kind of different.
And then who appoints how is the chairman of an individual board appointed by the VOC? How is the chairman?
It's elected by the
Oh,
membership.
And again, this is the audit committee is the only committee board that we have that a commissioner sits on. Okay, the others, commissioners do not participate in. As I said, I don't think it's a bad idea to have a commissioner sitting in a committee because we're more really in tune with everything going on, but it isn't necessary to be the chair.
And our VOC members liaisons to other committees, or do they have
We
any
do.
relationship at all?
We do not.
Mhm.
I also don't agree with that, but
Mhm.
that's not for this committee.
Mhm.
But I think that these are two things I think when we look at the audit ordinance
Okay,
to
yeah,
really
good
think
points.
about.
So the way the structure is right now, and I wasn't here when there was any sort of confrontational piece, you think the way the current one is, that allowed the confrontation?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And was that in line of them, well, I probably won't get into that, what they were confrontational about.
Are these the current ordinances that are on these last two pages?
Yes,
Yes.
that's current
Okay.
ordinance. Heather, I've got what I wrote almost 2 years ago exactly. Can you copy this
Yeah, at the end of the meeting.
and give it to the guys so they see?
Yeah.
So for the three of us who were in there, and Debbie, you were in there, Woody brought this to the table, and we were gonna change this. Was it COVID related that we just
Yeah.
never got?
Couldn't get back, couldn't get
We can never
together.
meet again.
You can,
Yeah.
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 Because I know Woody was in favor of
Change.
making some changes.
Yeah, he was.
And a lot of it was what you just mentioned.
Well, Woody and I talked about this a lot when he first got elected, well, actually even before he was elected. And Woody had served on the audit committee as well when there was confrontation, so he kind of had his own perspective of what could be improved. So there's, I kind of, again, I had something, I know Woody had read it and said there were a lot of things in there he agreed with, others, but, again, this is a committee that you guys are the financial experts in it, and kind of want your opinion on how you view the audit committee bringing value to the town. What kind of things should be in the ordinance, because it's all about bringing value to the town. So we can do that in October. The last item, Tony, I swear I remember that there were some financial tables being put together that was an idea of how the quarterly reporting would just be better. And I thought I thought something was started, and that it was actually almost getting to the point of the board might see it in the near future. And if that was happening, I didn't want it to get dropped, because people had put work into it, or did I dream something?
No, I think we were trying to work on.
We
some-
did,
yeah.
but I couldn't remember what we did
Yeah.
either. I couldn't find any old emails.
Yeah, so we were trying to kind of summarize it at a higher level, because at least the first meeting, or perhaps the first two that I came to, we were, just pot shopping everywhere
Right.
without some kind of big picture. So it was kind of a roll-up of a lot of worksheets into more of a summary, executive summary, and you could kind of say, well, this particular fund perhaps is worthy of some more discussion, because it looks a little bit out of kilter versus someone picking one line item out of an 8-page document. So we were, so that shell's still there. I think we discovered, and David and I did that it takes labor to pull that together. You can make it kind of easy, but it did take some staff time. So we just, because we were involved in some other issues on the committee at that time, I think it just kind of died on the vine. But I still have that. We're happy to kind of bring it back out and we can see, dust it off and see exactly what it is. But
Maybe-
basically, it's took the statements and rolled them into a little simpler format that
Right.
you could look at a high level, and then perhaps dive into an area that looked maybe that deserves some more attention versus just taking pot shots at 8 pages of financial statements.
And see, I think that is the kind of thing that
Yeah.
has value, because again, I do know from personal experience, what generally happens if people look at the financial
Right.
report and every line, they just focus on, why is this one low, why is this one high, how accurate is all of this, and they aren't really looking at the big picture. And I remember that from the discussions, it was trying to give a bigger picture, putting, I would just say, whole funds in perspective. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, if it's not gonna cost the town a lot of time to have to generate the report. So maybe in October, you can kind of bring the memories back, and let's see if it's worth finalizing it, now that it's 2 years later almost. Okay. So other than we need October calendars from people, I guess, Heather, will you do a call out?
Sure.
Okay. And then I would guess the next meeting would be, in December we have a new board. Yeah, in December we have a new board, so, October might be the only meeting we set, and see if we need something in November. But October to set. We've already got 2 agenda items, and we'll be discussing
Reviewing the audit.
review of the audit.
So it could be a little bit, it will be a longer meeting.
I'm afraid so.
Might want to start it earlier than 3.
Well, this was at people's availability.
Oh, I know what I wanted to bring, what I
Oh,
forgot to
sorry.
mention, that, okay, when the audit committee wants to discuss the audit, y'all are gonna have to realize that those questions have to be driven to the auditor.
Mhm.
And that this isn't my audit, so those questions would have to be answered by the auditor. Unless it's something like, well, why is there a deficiency here? That's obvious, but the auditor's work is what would be queried as part of the review of any of that work. So that's a scheduling
Yes.
thing that we're gonna have to integrate into anything.
Which is sort of why having everybody's availability the second half of October is good, because then there's
And
multiple.
just remember, she's got
dates.
more than one audit.
She's got, yes, and I need to also look at when our own October Board of Commissioners meeting is. So, do the best we can, it's always fluid. Okay,
And just so I can make sure I'm on track here, what is our role in reviewing the audit? The audit is gonna be presented to the Board of Commissioners. Is that go to them first, or we? I'm
That's
not
always,
clear.
that's always a question on who did it go to and submitting the preliminary to the local government commission.
'Cause I didn't really think that was the role of this group, but I could be wrong about that. But fundamental question.
Being in the Board of Commissioners, I'll tell you that my impression has been all along that we benefit from the audit committee seeing the audit, if possible, before us,
Before you.
if, so that.
But you know what, that's
but-
not in here.
I know, I'm aware of that. So that if there is anything that needs questioning, the audit committee is advising the board of any areas that they feel should be questioned at the Board of Commissioners meeting.
So that probably, I
But
mean, if that's the
it's- but
process, then
it's-
that kind of backs it even
But
up.
it's a timing thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
really.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of it is more of a desire for the Linus blanket, you know, the security blanket for the commissioners to be able to say, we've got 1, 2, 3 CPAs on the audit committee. They have looked at the audit and it's all good. It's one thing for the auditor to stay there, no problem. It's another thing for the commissioners to be able to default to the audit committee and say everything's cool, or it's not. And then it's a function of receiving the audit and accepting. That's been my
Yeah,
experience
because I can tell you,
and impression. Now,
It-
whether that's right or wrong, that's my
it
impression.
doesn't do me much good as a commissioner to have the auditor in front of me, for the Board of Commissioners to accept the report, and then 2 weeks later, the audit committee reports back to us, okay? It's like, that doesn't, now, if there were any issues or questions with the audit, and I've been through some where the commissioners were sitting there and a couple of them were saying there was a bigger problem than there was, much bigger. Okay, so we're getting all of this, and we haven't heard from the audit committee yet. So I'm just saying, it's, to me, it would make more sense for the audit committee to see something to pass on to the commissioners if they see anything noteworthy, see anything of real concern, or see nothing. And I'm perfectly fine with an audit committee member reporting to the Board of Commissioners on the audit. Now, of course, I guess that was the idea, that the commissioner is the chair, and the chair could report to the Board of Commissioners at the BOCM. But I will tell you that generally didn't happen, that there was anything much coming out of the chairperson reporting on what had been discussed.
In the past, did the audit committee review these prior to the board and give a recommendation? Has that ever been done?
Once they did in my years, once they did.
But the whole crux of the matter is that the local government commission is the daddy rabbit for these auditors. That's the scorecard. The auditor performs the audit of the town's finances, and the Board of Commissioners does not want to hear this, but it doesn't mean make a rat's ass what the Board of Commissioners thinks about the audit, because it is reviewed and approved by the local government commission.
But I think they're obligated to receive it.
They have to receive it, they have to receive it, I've forgotten to say next time. But they have to receive it, but it is the local government commissions, who actually approves. The Board of Commissioners receives it, yes, sir. But the local government commission is the approval authority, because it gets into, local governments are extensions of the state, and the state treasurer is the watchdog of the local government entity's purse. So that's why the approval authority is at the local government commission. Now there's all kind of iterations in it.
I think this October meeting is become pretty lengthy. and now is earlier than we, how often do you have, every 2 weeks? So,
The Board of Commissioners?
Once a
No,
month.
sir, just once a month.
so if you're gonna have to approve it in time for this thing we started this meeting with, it
We
needs to
need a
be done by
September
October,
meeting.
then you're really kind of
Well,
backing this thing
And,
up.
and therein goes, I believe that the technical submission to the local government commission is a draft, just as long as you get it. And it's a final draft, but there can be changes made to it, so, normally the Board of Commissioners reviews it actually after it's submitted to the local government commission.
Yeah.
We probably need to double check with Elsa on that. You know, there's just really been a lot of attention to making sure that that report is submitted to the local government commission on time.
Particularly
by
since
the
we were,
31st.
because we were late one year, and that,
Late one year.
again, that caused a great deal of stir in the town, unnecessary stir. And one of the things that this committee can also bring is when there is something flagged, it's, my God, it's almost like the heavens have opened and we are going to hell because something's been flagged. And having the committee put things in perspective, you know, it's like, we're not gonna be perfect every time, and part of the reason for an audit is to pick up things that you correct so that they don't become something more flagrant or something repetitive. But these things have been at times blown out of proportion. So if there are any funny statements or findings, you know, to have it put in perspective by the audit committee is valuable. It can keep things calm. But things are a lot calmer than they used to be, but then we haven't met for 14 months either. So maybe, are we talking about a September meeting then?
I don't think that they'll be the,
I don't
I don't think we'll be, the auditor will have it ready for any type of
No.
review.
Well, if you're gonna have these, I don't think you can get all 3 of those agenda items done in one meeting.
No.
If you wanted to continue to have those agenda items, it might be that you pull those into a separate meeting, not the audit review, but looking at the audit, the committee role, maybe looking at some financial
And
oversight models.
I just don't want to lose your work that you had already put
No,
in.
no,
Because
well,
it did
you know.
have value.
But I'm not saying lose it, I'm just saying let's just be reasonable, you know, how much can
We
we
can
do in one-
defer it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could talk about this for an hour, you know, who knows?
Or you can just let me rewrite it.
That's one approach.
No, that would not be good, but, you know, I think that this committee should decide what needs to be changed for the good of how the committee operates.
Would it be helpful to share the audit committee role in my organization? Because we have an audit committee and they do review and meet with the auditors and then recommend to the Board of Commissioners that they accept and, you know, all of that. So.
Doesn't hurt.
Is your organization a governmental organization?
We're a not-for-profit. I would not say we're governmental, but we receive governmental funds, so we have to jump through a lot of hoops because Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services pays a lot of money for us.
All right, point taken. The next meeting, we will discuss the audit, and we'll try to figure out how to schedule the meeting in October at the right time to discuss that. David, you said you'd get with Elsa to see if she can come up with a sort of window, and then I guess just give us your October availabilities. And the other 2 items we'll figure out if we can before the end of the year. If not, it'll go into the next term. I was really hoping before we got to the end of the year that
Well,
we
why
could
don't
at least
you- why don't we
adjust.
go- why don't we-
September, have
well,
a separate meeting in September.
That's what I'm saying, maybe we go ahead and do a separate meeting
That
on
would be
those 2
fine.
items, and let the audit's gonna
Okay.
almost be dictated by the schedule, really. But
That-
these other 2, we can
Okay.
go ahead and do those.
As
I think
long-
getting
as long as we
this
don't
roll
have-
down is,
Yes,
I
is
think this
key.
is the very first thing you should.
Yeah, and
It's
that clears
key.
that up prior to the
It's
audit.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as long as we don't have a hurricane in September, I'm all for it.
It'll just give y'all another excuse to come to the beach.
Right.
I am at the beach, yeah, but, yeah, September has just not been a good month a lot of times, but September meeting and October meeting.
We'll put out a calendar call. Is there any days away from September? Well, we'll just put out a calendar call.
And if there's a particular time of day or a particular weekday that, you know, everybody prefers for future reference, it's just good to know. You guys work, I don't.
I don't.
You don't, but I don't work anymore, so it's nice.
Well, Janine, is it better normally for you at the beginning of a week or ending of a week? And just,
Yes.
I would say in general, just,
Yeah,
I don't really
general.
work, but it's probably better for me because I don't live here all the time. But if it were later in the week or early in the week, I could
It's
stay.
either
Three-day
Monday or
weekends,
Friday.
some
so you're-
three-day weekends,
I
right, for
understand that.
everybody.
It's either
so
Monday or
Thursdays
Friday.
or Fridays, you know, late
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday.
Every day works for me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am. Yeah.
Working for that.
Yeah.
Exactly, me too.
Okay, then if there is no other business, do I have, motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.